What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. We continue with our 2023 schedule preview projected record series. Illinois is up next, a team that had a surprise season last year. I don't think many expected them to be in the top 25 at times, and early on it looked like they were in the driver's seat to win the Big Ten West. They didn't close it out, but still had a really good season for what was expected. We take a look at this schedule for 2023, and they're going to open up with Toledo on September the 2nd. Then they'll play Kansas on the road September 9th. Then Penn State on September 16th, so that's how they'll open up Big Ten play. Really tough game there, of course, but they will get that one at home. And then Florida Atlantic on September 23rd. That also will be a home game. And then a big game against the team that won the Big Ten West last year, Purdue, on September 30th. They'll play that game on the road. So you look at that first month of the season, you've got Kansas and Purdue on the road, you got Penn State, and then a couple of easier games with Toledo and FAU. Then we go to the month of October. They will play Nebraska on the 7th, then Maryland on October 14th, then Wisconsin, and Maryland is on the road, Wisconsin at home on October 21st. Then they get a bye week, so their bye week comes pretty late in the season in that last Saturday of October. Then they go to the month of November. They'll play Minnesota on the road on the 4th, Indiana at home on the 11th, Iowa on the 18th, also on the road, and Northwestern at home on the 25th. Interesting, if you notice the schedule, once you get to Purdue or to FAU, it's like home, away, home, away, home, away, home, away, home. So their schedule has a lot of balance to it. You've got some easier games in there. Indiana, kind of late in the season, gives you a little bit of a break there, potentially. I'm not saying they're going to win that game, but a little bit of an easier opponent. The non-conference is not bad at all, although Kansas, of course, had a great year last year, so that may not be an easy win there. But again, this is just a really balanced schedule. They don't play Ohio State, they don't play Michigan, but they do have to play Penn State. You don't get to play Rutgers, but still, I think as long as you don't have to play Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State, as long as you don't have to play two of those three teams, you're doing pretty well out of the West. And again, no back-to-back road games, no big, hard, tough non-conference schedule team. So this is a pretty favorable schedule for Illinois, a team that I think was actually underrated last year. And they've got some pieces coming back. This could be a surprise team again this year. I think people kind of just forgot about them because of the way they finished off the season. But let's get to the projection. This is the scale that we use. If it's a 50-50 game, it'll stay in the white. If it's a less than 20, over 80, those are games where I think the spread will be over 20 points. 20 points or more, going back to the 50-50 games, those are games where I think the spread will be less than a touchdown. 20-29, 71-80, those are games where I think the spread will be double digits. 30-39, 61-70, those are games where I think the spread will be about a touchdown. 6, 7, 8, 9 points. Kind of in that range. So let's go through the schedule here for Illinois and give you a projection. First off, we got two easy wins. Toledo, FAU. I think Illinois will be favored by 21 to 24 points probably in these two games. They should be able to take care of business. Not cupcake games, but games where Illinois will be a heavy favorite. So you do expect them to take care of business in those two matchups. Then you go to no games in the blue, but we got a couple of games in the purple. I think Illinois will be about a touchdown favorite against Indiana and Northwestern. They should clearly be the better team. These games are at home. So not guaranteed easy wins, but games that I think Illinois, like I said, will clearly be favored in. And then how about underdogs? There'll be one game where they're a clear underdog, and that's Penn State, even though it is at home. But Penn State's a preseason top 10 team. Illinois, probably not a preseason top 25 team for most people, and so I think they'll clearly be an underdog in that game. So then you look at the rest of this schedule: Kansas, Purdue, Nebraska, Maryland, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa. Can you tell me that one team is going to be a significant favorite over the other in any of these games? You really can't. There's a bunch of 50-50 games here for Illinois, and this is, if you've been watching my videos, this is really how it shakes out for all the teams of the Big Ten West except for Northwestern, because you feel like those other six teams are pretty even. I've got my favorites. I've got a couple of teams that I think are going to probably finish at the top of that division. But that's just my personal take, my prediction. We're not really getting into that just yet. The overall perception of these teams, I think, is that it's a pretty wide open division, and there's really no separation. There's no games here where you say Illinois, they're probably not going to be able to beat Iowa or Maryland. Of course, Maryland comes from the East, and Kansas is a non-conference game. So we're talking about the 5 50-50 games in the division in the Big Ten West, and then you add in Maryland, who's on a similar level, and Kansas, and that's why you've got 7 50-50 games here on the schedule for Illinois. So, if you win a lot of close games, you win these 50-50 games, you've got a chance to have a really good year and potentially win the Big Ten West. But if you lose a lot of these close games, they might not make it to a bowl game. So I think the ceiling is pretty high for Illinois. Maybe a 9-3 type season, but I think the floor is also, kind of low. It's missing a bowl game. It's going 5-7. If you lose to Kansas and Penn State and Purdue on the road and Maryland on the road and Minnesota on the road and Iowa on the road, and then you slip up and lose to Wisconsin or Nebraska, I mean, you can see how they could easily finish at 5-7. But at the same time, you could win a lot of those games and maybe only lose to Penn State and a couple of others and go 9-3. So, you could see them going anywhere from 9-3 to 5-7. That's kind of how I look at it, just because you've got so many 50-50 games. And last year they didn't do all that well in the close games. Again, that's why I think they were better than what their record suggested last season. And we might see that again this year, or we might see them go 9-3, and they're really not as good as some of the other 9-3 teams. They just found a way to win some close games. We'll look back at the end of the season. I think you're going to see for Illinois a lot of close games, again, when we look back at the end of the season. So what does this mean for the projection? So we use this formula that I use to get the projection. So Indiana and Northwestern, I'll use 65% for them. I'll use 35% for Penn State. All the games in the white will stay 50-50, so we'll use 50% for those games. You average all that out and count Toledo and FAU as wins, and you get a projection of 7-5. How about that? So right in the middle of 9-3 and 5-7, 7-5. I think that's a very fair projection for Illinois. Again, if you beat Toledo, FAU, Indiana, Northwestern, you lose to Penn State, that would mean that you're sitting there at 4-1, and actually that would put them at 3-4 in these 50-50 games. So if they were able to go 4-3 in the 50-50 games, then that would put them up to 8-4. So that would tell you that actually 8-4 is more likely than 6-6, but 7-5 is kind of the average. And again, I think that's very fair. If they lose to Penn State, you could see them losing to Purdue, Maryland, Minnesota, Iowa on the road. That's 3 tough games there. Actually, if you take those 4 road games and then add Penn State, there's your 5 losses. So you could easily see them going 7-5. You could see them doing a little better, doing a little worse. This is a tough one to predict, but the projection for Illinois in 2023 is 7-5.